The artifact's theft. Commander Raven Walsh stood at the observation deck of the Earth Defense Station Hyperion, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the empty pedestal where humanity's most significant archaeological discovery had rested just hours ago. The Rosetta Stone of interstellar travel, as historians had dubbed it, was gone. "Report," she said, her voice steadied despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. Lieutenant Prisha Patel, her chief of security, stepped forward with a data pad. The security feeds were scrambled for exactly 3.7 minutes at 0200 hours, Prisha explained, swiping through the corrupted footage. When they came back online, the artifact was gone. But they missed something. A slight smile crossed her face as she pulled up a different feed. The auxiliary cameras caught this. The hologram shifted to show a shimmer in the air, the telltale sign of a cloaking device. But more importantly, it showed the distinctive angular design of a Xylaxian scout ship. They thought they were being clever, Raven mused, leaning closer to study the footage. Got cocky with their technology. Didn't even consider we might have countermeasures for their cloaking systems. The Xylaxians had arrived in Earth's solar system 6 months ago, all sleek ships and advanced technology. They'd presented themselves as benevolent visitors, interested in cultural exchange. But Raven had seen the look in Ambassador Thraxule's compound eyes during their first meeting, that mixture of condescension and dismissal that so many advanced species showed toward primitive humanity. "Get me a direct line to their embassy station," Raven ordered, straightening her uniform. "Let's see how they explain this." The communication screen flickered to life, revealing Ambassador Thraxule's elongated face. The Xylaxian's iridescent scales shifted in patterns that Raven had learned to recognize as smugness. Commander Walsh, Thraxule's translator, converted his clicks and whistles into smooth English. "To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" "Cut the diplomacy, Ambassador," Raven replied, her voice arctic. "You know why I'm calling. The artifact you stole from our museum? We want it back." The ambassador's scales rippled in what might have been amusement. "Stole? Commander, I assure you I have no idea what you're talking about. Though I must say, if something has gone missing from your quaint collection, perhaps you should focus on improving your security systems. They seem rather primitive." Raven felt her jaw tighten but kept her expression neutral. "Interesting choice of words, Ambassador. Especially considering we have footage of a Xylaxian ship at the scene." For just a moment, Thraxule's scales lost their shimmer. But he recovered quickly. "Commander, surely you're not suggesting that my people, who have mastered faster-than-light travel and quantum computing, would need to steal artifacts from a species that has barely left its own solar system?" "Need? No," Raven agreed. "But want? That's different. Especially when you don't think we're advanced enough to stop you." The ambassador's translator couldn't quite capture the condescension in his next series of clicks. "Commander, even if, hypothetically, we had taken your artifact, what exactly do you imagine you could do about it? Your ships can barely reach Mars without breaking down." Raven allowed herself a small smile. "That's an interesting assumption, Ambassador. I hope you're willing to bet your people's lives on it being correct." She cut the transmission before Thraxule could respond, turning back to Lieutenant Patel. "Sound General Quarters. Contact Admiral Hassan and tell him Operation Sleeping Giant is a go." As alarms began to blare throughout the station, Raven took one last look at the empty pedestal in the museum. The Xylaxians had made a crucial mistake, one that countless species had made before when dealing with humanity. They'd assumed technological advancement was the only measure of a civilization's capability. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Silent warning. Lieutenant Dominic Santos had spent the last 5 hours buried in ancient texts and digital archives, his eyes burning from staring at countless screens. The artifact's markings had always been a mystery, but now he was seeing them in a new light. "Commander Walsh, he called out as she entered the research bay. You need to see this. His fingers flew across the holographic interface, bringing up a series of comparisons. The Xylaxians didn't just steal a historical curiosity. They stole the key to something much bigger. Raven moved closer, studying the patterns Dominic had highlighted. Explain. These markings? They're not just decorative. They're coordinates, Dominic said, his voice trembling with excitement. But not just any coordinates. They point to something our ancestors built. Something they hid. Hidden weapons? Raven asked, her mind already racing with possibilities. Dominic shook his head. Better. Hidden shipyards. Massive ones. Built in secret during the first contact wars, before we officially made it off Earth. Our ancestors knew we weren't alone, and they prepared accordingly. In the command center, Admiral Hassan's hologram flickered as he processed this information. So the Xylaxians may have inadvertently stolen the location of humanity's greatest secret, he mused. No wonder the preservation protocols were so strict. Sir, Lieutenant Patel interrupted, her voice urgent. We're detecting movement from the Xylaxian embassy station. They're preparing to jump to FTL. Raven's eyes hardened. They're running. They must have decoded enough to realize what they have. She turned to the Admiral. Request permission to execute Phase 1. Hassan nodded grimly. Granted. Show them what humanity's been hiding. Throughout the solar system, hidden sensors began activating. Orbital platforms that had appeared to be simple communication relays revealed weapon systems that would have made any spacefaring civilization pause. And in the asteroid belt, dozens of ships that had been masquerading as mining vessels suddenly dropped their disguises. On the bridge of the Xylaxian embassy station, Ambassador Thraxuel was preparing to depart when his sensor officer let out a startled whistle. Ambassador. Multiple weapons platforms detecting, everywhere. They're not in our database. Impossible, Thraxuel snapped. Their technology is centuries behind ours. These readings must be false. The station shuddered as a warning shot passed within meters of their hull. The ambassador's scales paled as a transmission came through. Ambassador, Commander Walsh's voice was calm, almost pleasant. Perhaps we should continue our earlier discussion about technological capabilities. I believe you were making some interesting assumptions. Thraxuel's compound eyes widened as more ships emerged from hiding. Not the primitive vessels humans were known to use, but sleek predators that had been waiting silently for centuries. You've been deceiving us, he accused. Presenting yourselves as primitive. No deception, Ambassador, Raven replied. Just prudence. Humanity learned long ago that it's better to be underestimated. Now, about our artifact. The coordinates are incomplete. Thraxuel blurted. We can't decode them fully. We need more time. Oh, we know they're incomplete, Raven said. That artifact you stole? It's one of 3 pieces. Did you really think we'd keep something that valuable in one place? Now, you have 2 choices. Return what you took and leave our system, or find out exactly why Earth is classified as a death world. As if to emphasize her point, another warning shot blazed past the station, this one close enough to make their shields flare. In the command center, Lieutenant Patel watched the Xylaxian life signs with satisfaction. Their heart rates are elevated, she reported. They're scared. Good, Raven replied. Fear is the beginning of respect. Admiral, the strike teams are in position. Should the ambassador choose unwisely? Hassan's hologram nodded. Authorized. Remember, we're not just protecting Earth now. We're protecting the location of humanity's backup plan. Dominic looked up from his station. Commander, they're trying to transmit data out of the system. The artifact's markings. Jam them, Raven ordered. Remind our guests that leaving with stolen property isn't an option. As the Xylaxian station found itself surrounded by weapons that shouldn't exist and ships that defied their understanding of human capabilities, Ambassador Thraxule faced a harsh reality. They hadn't stolen from primitives. They'd stolen from predators who had been playing a very, very long game. And now the game was over. Show of force. Ambassador Thraxule made his decision in the way most cornered predators do, by lashing out. The Xylaxian station's weapons powered up, its shields humming to full capacity. You dare threaten us? His voice crackled across the comm channel. The Xylaxian Empire spans 50 systems. We don't bow to primitive threats. Commander Walsh watched the tactical display with the patience of a hunter. Lieutenant Patel, show them what a primitive threat looks like. Before the ambassador could react, 3 stealth shuttles decloaked inside his station's shields. They had been there the entire time, having slipped in during the initial conversation. Elite human strike teams breached the hull at predetermined points, their armor systems adapting instantly to the station's artificial atmosphere. Impossible. Thraxule's translator barely managed to convey his shock. Our shields are impressive, Raven finished for him. But humanity learned long ago that the best shield is useless if your enemy is already inside it. The strike teams moved through the station like ghosts, their movements coordinated with an efficiency that spoke of centuries of preparation. They encountered resistance, of course. Xylaxian security forces were among the best in known space. But humanity had been preparing for this moment since they first looked up at the stars and realized they weren't alone. Lieutenant Santos monitored the operation from his station. Strike Team Alpha has reached the artifact. Beta and Charlie teams are securing critical systems. He paused, checking another reading. Commander, they're trying to purge their data cores. Let them, Raven replied calmly. The information we want isn't in their computers. On the station, Sergeant Fatima Rahman led Alpha Team through the twisting corridors. Her armor's systems automatically mapped and analyzed every detail, adding to humanity's understanding of Xylaxian technology. The aliens had superior materials, certainly, but their tactics were predictable, relying too heavily on their technological advantage. Contact, her second-in-command whispered over the tactical net. 3 hostiles, using some kind of energy shields. Fatima smiled behind her visor. Remember your training. Shields don't mean much against good old-fashioned physics. Her team demonstrated this point beautifully, using simple magnetic grapples to pin the Xylaxian defenders to the walls. Their energy shields flickered uselessly, designed to stop energy weapons but not prepared for such primitive attacks. In the command center, Admiral Hassan watched the operation with approval. Commander Walsh, the Xylaxian reinforcement fleet has just dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system. Right on schedule, Raven nodded. Lieutenant Patel, signal the Thermopylae. Time to show them why humans don't need fancy technology to win a fight. The Xylaxian reinforcements approached with the confidence of a superior force, their formation perfect, their weapons charged. They were met by a single human vessel, a ship that looked more like an ancient sea vessel than a spacecraft. What is this? The Xylaxian fleet commander demanded. You send a single primitive ship against our fleet? Captain Jasmine Wong of the TNS Thermopylae responded by releasing her ship's cargo, thousands of simple metal spheres, each about the size of a basketball. The Xylaxians' advanced sensors dismissed them as debris, right until the moment the spheres split apart, revealing themselves as autonomous drone swarms. Sometimes, Jasmine broadcast on all frequencies, the old ways are the best ways. The drones weren't particularly advanced. They didn't have shields or energy weapons. What they did have was mass, momentum, and perfect coordination. They slammed into the Xylaxian ships like a metallic tidal wave, overwhelming shields designed to stop energy weapons but not simple kinetic impacts. Back on the station, Ambassador Thraxule watched in horror as his reinforcements were systematically dismantled by what his people would have considered primitive weapons. "Stop. Please, we surrender." Commander Walsh's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. "The artifact, Ambassador. Now." In the relic vault, Sergeant Ramon's team had already secured their objective. The ancient artifact pulsed with a faint blue light, responding to human presence in a way it never had for its alien thieves. "Ma'am," Fatima reported, "you should see this. The markings, they're changing." Raven's eyes narrowed. "Changing how, Sergeant?" "They're completing themselves. I think it was waiting for us." Tables turned. The artifact's glow intensified under Sergeant Ramon's touch, casting blue shadows across the vault. Ancient symbols shifted and rearranged themselves, telling a story that had waited centuries to be revealed. "It's some kind of key," Lieutenant Santos breathed, studying the live feed from Ramon's helmet cam. "But not just to the shipyards. Commander, these new markings, they're showing something else. Something bigger." On the bridge of the crippled Xylaxian flagship, Ambassador Thraxule's scales had lost all color. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," he whispered. "That artifact, it's not just yours. It's part of something that predates both our species." Commander Walsh's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "We didn't steal it just to humiliate you," Thraxule admitted. "Our deep space sensors detected an energy signature matching ancient legends. The Nexus keys, artifacts left behind by the first ones, scattered across the galaxy. We thought primitives like you couldn't possibly understand their significance." Lieutenant Patel's console lit up with urgent signals. "Commander, the artifact's energy output is increasing exponentially. It's resonating with something out in the Kuiper Belt." The second piece, Dominic Santos realized. That's why we could never decode the full coordinates. The artifacts aren't just keys, they're calling to each other. Admiral Hassan's hologram flickered with concern. "Commander Walsh, if the Xylaxians detected one artifact's energy signature, others will come," Raven finished grimly. "Lieutenant Santos, what exactly are these keys supposed to open?" Before Dominic could answer, space itself seemed to shudder. A massive structure began to phase into visibility at the edge of the solar system, a construct of impossible geometry and ancient power that had waited eons to be awakened. "The gateway," Ambassador Thraxule breathed. The legends were true. A portal network built by the first ones, connecting distant points of space. But it was supposed to be a myth. Raven's mind raced with the implications. Humanity had hidden their advanced technology, playing the long game of appearing primitive while preparing for threats from the stars. But this changed everything. They hadn't just been protecting their own secrets, they'd been unknowing guardians of something far more ancient and powerful. "Ma'am," Sergeant Ramon's voice crackled over the comm, "the artifact, it's showing us more. These aren't just coordinates anymore. They're instructions. Warnings." Her voice dropped. "The first ones, they didn't leave. They're waiting. And I think they chose us to find them." In the command center, tactical displays showed multiple FTL signatures approaching the solar system. Other spacefaring races had detected the gateway's activation. They were coming, drawn by the promise of ancient power and technological secrets. "Well," Admiral Hassan said dryly, "it seems the galaxy is about to discover that humanity's primitive status was the least of their misconceptions." Commander Walsh turned to Ambassador Thraxule, whose compound eyes were fixed on the massive gateway. "Ambassador, you have a choice to make. Your people tried to steal what they thought was a simple artifact from a primitive race. Instead, you've stumbled into something far bigger. So what's it going to be? Continue treating us as primitives and face the consequences, or acknowledge that perhaps humanity's apparent technological level was a choice, not a limitation. The ambassador's scales shifted in patterns of submission and fear. The Xylaxian Empire would be interested in discussing an alliance. I thought you might say that, Raven smiled. Because whatever's coming through that gateway, whatever the first ones intended, humanity intends to be ready. And after today's demonstration, I think you understand why underestimating us would be a very poor decision. Respect earned. In the hours that followed the gateway's appearance, humanity showed the watching galaxy exactly why they had been playing the long game. As alien fleets gathered at the edges of the solar system, the full extent of Earth's hidden defenses emerged from centuries of secrecy. Commander Walsh stood on the bridge of the TNS Hyperion, watching as hundreds of ships emerged from their hiding places in the asteroid belt and beyond. Each vessel represented decades of careful preparation, combining humanity's primitive ingenuity with reverse-engineered advanced technology. Additional contacts dropping out of FTL, Lieutenant Patel reported. Identifying Centaurian battle groups, Arcturus Confederation ships, and, Sir, the Galactic Council itself has sent representatives. Of course they have, Raven murmured. Nothing like an ancient superweapon appearing to get everyone's attention. She turned to Admiral Hassan's hologram. Status of Operation Sleeping Giant? All defense grids are online, Hassan confirmed. The lunar bases are unveiled, and Mars Command reports all shipyards are combat ready. We're as prepared as we'll ever be. Ambassador Thraxule, now effectively a prisoner aboard the Hyperion, watched in stunned silence as humanity's true military might was revealed. All this time, he whispered, you could have conquered dozens of systems. Why hide? Because we're not conquerors, Lieutenant Santos answered, still studying the artifact's evolving markings. We're guardians. And now we know what we were guarding. The gateway pulsed with ancient energy, its massive structure defying conventional physics. The artifact in the ship's secure vault resonated in response, projecting holographic messages that Dominic worked frantically to decode. Commander, he called out suddenly, I've got it. The first ones, they didn't just leave these artifacts as keys. They left them as tests. Sergeant Rahman, who had refused to leave the artifact's side since its recovery, nodded. They wanted to find species who would discover the keys but choose not to use them immediately for conquest. Species who would understand the value of patience, of playing the long game. Like hiding your true capabilities, Raven mused, waiting until you're ready to handle the responsibility that comes with power. The command center fell silent as a new transmission cut across all frequencies. The Galactic Council, the supposed authority over all spacefaring races, demanded immediate access to the gateway and its secrets. Commander Walsh's response would be remembered for centuries to come. The gateway remains under Earth's protection. Any attempt to seize it by force will be met with the full might of humanity's defense forces. However, she paused, allowing the tension to build, we are willing to discuss peaceful cooperation in studying its secrets. After all, the first ones chose to hide their legacy in our system for a reason. You can't expect us to trust primitives with such power, the Arcturus representative sputtered. Captain Wong's voice cut in from the Thermopylae, still surrounded by her swarm of primitive but devastating drones. I believe we've already demonstrated the folly of underestimating Earth's capabilities. As if to emphasize her point, the gateway pulsed again, this time projecting a message that everyone could understand. Ancient symbols transformed into a clear warning. Only those who understand the value of restraint may pass. Admiral Hassan smiled. It seems the first ones and humanity share similar philosophies about the responsible use of power. In the days that followed, the galaxy's power structure underwent a seismic shift. The species that had dismissed Earth as a primitive backwater now found themselves negotiating with a civilization that had orchestrated one of the greatest strategic deceptions in galactic history. The Xylaxian Empire, through Ambassador Thraxule, was the first to formally acknowledge Earth's new status and request a mutual defense treaty. Others quickly followed, realizing that humanity's apparent technological limitations had been a choice, not a weakness. Commander Walsh stood in the observation deck of the Hyperion, watching Earth's combined fleet take up defensive positions around the gateway. Lieutenant Santos had been right, the artifact hadn't just been a key to ancient technology. It had been a key to humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage, precisely when they were ready for it. "Lieutenant Patel," she called out, "send a message to all Earth forces and our new allies. The long game is over. Operation Sleeping Giant is complete. But our real work is just beginning." As the gathered fleet acknowledged her orders, Raven allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy had learned a crucial lesson: never judge a species by their apparent limitations. Because sometimes, those limitations are chosen, a shield behind which something far more impressive grows and waits for its moment. And humanity's moment had finally arrived.